All right. This might be one of the first microbrews you ever, I think, drink, or at least at our age. This is probably one of the first ones you experience.
I needed an amber ale because I've been experimenting with Creole food.
Oh.
So I made some dirty rice. It called for some amber beer.
That's awesome. All right. I made it. First comment before we get into this. I definitely felt like we should have stopped at the end of chapter 15 because if I had known that it was going to end that way, the way that it ended, I think that was the perfect mic drop. Pull it a little closer to your face if you don't mind. I felt like that was the mic drop moment. Do you want to summarize? Do you want me to summarize this time?
Well,
I just read it,
yeah,
so I should be able to.
It might be.
So we completed the last time was the anatomy of a plot, and we jumped into part 2, the anatomy of a manhunt, which is where we are now, which they are beginning to hunt down our Jackal. We got our
beautiful blonde boy.
Our heroes have been placed together.
Mm-hmm.
Our boy Claude LaBelle, hashtag good cop,
Mm-hmm.
very good cop,
Mm-hmm.
which they say many times. He's been assigned the task of finding the Jackal without bringing any attention to the fact that he's looking for the Jackal. He immediately says, hey, I need to go talk to the Good Old Boy Network, they call it, the Good Boy Network, where they talk to friends and police in several locations. Did I write down the locations? I feel like I did.
U.S., U.K., Belgium, Italy,
Holland,
South
Italy,
Africa.
West Germany, which I found interesting, in South Africa. Yeah. Most leading to nothing. A lot of the conversation is just about talking to his friends and his friends being like, I don't know anything. The U.S. is like, hey, we know of a couple guys, but they're probably not him. And then Italy's like, yeah, we know a couple guys, but they're mobsters and they wouldn't be involved in any politics.
One's dead, another has brain problems,
Yeah.
another's in jail.
And eventually Britain says, we don't have anything. But then our friend in Britain goes and talks to some other people in Britain, thinking that maybe he may have done this crime or done other crimes outside of Britain. And they find this guy, a English businessman, by the name of Charles Calthrop. And that leads them to think that maybe he's the guy. And then we find out
He had assassinated a guy in the Caribbean.
they said there was a dude in the Caribbean, or not the Caribbean. He was in the Caribbean, but he was Ivory Coast. Anyways, not important. He was in an island, and he toppled a government, and there were rumors that there was an amazing shot that took down the driver of this car, and that allowed the rebels or overthrowers to blow up his car.
And the shot did sound pretty cool.
It sounded like a very
some Achilles
Yeah.
heel type of shit going through the little triangle, car guy to car guy, the little triangle window that they have, not that big old rectangular
which is
one.
of course triangle. The triangle guy is the official term for those windows.
Yeah.
And there happened to be a British businessman who fled the country shortly afterwards. They do a little more research. They find out who this guy was, find out he was an arms dealer for a British arms company. And his reason for fleeing was pretty legitimate in that he was trying to deal with like the sheriff of the town or the officer in charge. And the officer in charge was, of course, under the regime of this guy. And they were kind of going down
there.
the old Rolodex of who was involved with this guy.
But, I mean,
and
come on.
then they were like, this regime is out.
Yeah.
We later find out that this is the guy that we're looking for. This is the Jackal.
They go to his house. They don't find anything. He's, according to his neighbors, off in Scotland, zip-zapping around, doing a little fishing.
Doing some fishing.
You and I know that that's not true. He has instead flown into Milan, driven into France.
He is now in France.
Got past the border guards.
He did with his fake passport. Charles Dugan.
He does get stopped at the border.
He does. They do a little look around his car.
They've got a bolo out for his description, and they correctly identify him as
A blonde
looking
Britishman.
Like him. Yeah. So they take him across and search his car, but they don't find the gun because, again, car guy to car guy.
He's welded it underneath the car.
To the chassis.
The chassis. The chassis.
to the
Which is, of course, the English version of the French word chassis. They do at the end of chapter 15, which I was saying we probably should have called it because it was a very good. Let's go to commercial break or let's end this season. The next season we'll be there. We find that Jackal in French is Chacal, which are the first three letters of Charles and the first three letters of Caltrope, which happen to be his name.
Was that a little too cute?
Yeah, it was way too cute for me.
Yeah, it was a little too cute for the book, for our competent assassin.
I immediately was like, I guess you're so egotistical that you have to leave a calling card. But for someone who is so meticulous about everything else, I think it's a little too obvious.
It seemed a little out of character and completely unnecessary too. They've already got the description. It just sort of seemed like a thing that came to the author while the author was.
I think it makes sense as a narrative way of saying we know this is the guy now. Because at first they're just like, we can't find this guy. He's
suspects,
missing.
Though.
That's true. But I think I'm not
narrowed in on this
I'm
guy.
defending it the best I can. I'm playing defense attorney here. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying that it's kind of like their method, and obviously it's their just little wink, nudge, nudge. But I do think it does not play to his character that he would be so egotistical as to have to leave a clue that it was him that did this thing.
Then on the back end, there is a little bit of a pseudo cat and mouse game because one guy in the book is sleeping with a spy.
Yep, love that guy.
He's giving up secrets just like our favorite Pollock gave up secrets.
With a little less
various manipulations on the penis.
Yeah, a little less serious, but yes, he's kind of a cuck, if you will.
Well, they're marrying each other. The situation, so he gets
he gets some sex from this younger lady who he's convinced loves him.
And he spits out that they know who the Jackal is and have the code name, and then he lets it slip that they have the real name, and she radios these in to the OAS people.
Yep, and they have a difficult time telling him.
They're able to relay the information to him, but not in an official stand-down way. Just in a, hey, they know your code name. I don't think they give a. I don't think.
But
he
they're
knows
also
that they know his actual name.
He has not contacted them since they found that out. So they found out his code name, and guy having sex with his mistress has said it to her, but the only way they can contact him is when he calls them.
Right.
And he has not called them since they found that out.
Well, he got that they were on to him.
Yes.
But that they know his real name.
Yep. They got that they are on to him, and that they know that he's probably there, and then they have a description of the Britishman.
So we talked about how the author loves talking about competent guys, and this guy who squeals, who accidentally.
Not competent.
But he is competent at playing the political game. So he's not a competent man competently playing a bullshit role.
Yes.
One of my favorite parts was him complaining to her that they only assigned one guy and he looks like a doofus. Are we sure he's not wrong?
Explain that more.
You've got a credible threat of assassination on your president. You learn this and you say, I know what we should do. We should go to the police department and find my favorite detective, and he'll solve it.
Yep. And he's mad that he's not the people?
Are we sure? He's complaining that there's not, like a task task force.
Sure. But I mean, there is a task force.
I'm not sure he's not. He has two guys, at least at the start. He has himself, and he's got his secretary.
Yep. But he has the unlimited resources at his hand. He just has to use them.
Which initially means a pot of coffee and a cot in his office.
That is where he starts, yeah. Then he gets into the old boy club, which delivers, by the way.
Not without some amount of drama, because England is trying to figure out whether they want to give France this information, because Anglo-Franco relations are not in the best places right now.
No, and we actually see a little bit of that, which I actually really enjoyed, was the part where they just show up the British minister, or no. He was Sir Jasper Quigley, the head of the English Bureau of the Foreign Office, who gets super upset that there was this inquiry into a British person, and that he didn't know about it, and that they gave the French a possible British person who might be responsible for this thing, and they didn't like that.
Jasper Quigley, the most made-up name you've ever heard.
Pretty close. But he's knighted. So he's a big deal. He also sounded like a climber, a social climber.
Yeah. Did you look at it? They referenced a couple of political things.
Yep.
Within England and France's relation at this time. Did you look at any of those?
I did not.
There were a couple that they alluded to. One was is it the Commonwealth Union or something like that? This is basically a proto-European Union, a collection of countries where you can freely trade and visit in between each of these different countries. And France voted against England joining back in the 60s. They eventually joined in the 70s, around the time that the book is published. But the first ones is like France, Italy, West Germany, and then a couple of smaller ones there. So they're pissed about this. And
I don't think the relationship between them is very good, period.
We don't. That's follow our other podcast for a full rundown
on why France and Germany
Anglo-Franco relations. We're gonna go balls deep.
We're gonna dive deep into that.
We're gonna get to the bottom of it, and actually at the end of it, we do come to a conclusion.
And we're gonna solve it all. We're gonna fix it. But we're gonna finish the last episode, a complete episode on how to fix it,
and we're gonna mail it to everyone. Not just the politicians.
Nope. Everybody, all of France waiters, and all of Britain will receive our
bankers.
Solution.
There's also the Prime Minister is in a little bit of a controversy because his Secretary of State has an affair, denies it. It gets proven that he does have an affair, and everybody runs. There's a huge national scandal. That's the scandal that the Prime Minister is mired in. And he's saying he's fatigued. He's not feeling all that good. He would resign a couple of months later and then die.
But the Prime Minister does kind of save our efforts.
Yeah, he says go with God. Yeah,
because our
resources from
our guy Jasper Quigley is kind of presenting one side of the things in England where they're like, you need to shut up. If there is somebody British operating outside of our soil, we shouldn't help them find them because that looks bad on us. Yep. And the Prime Minister says, you have everything you need. I liked CDG. He's my bro.
We're homies from
way back.
We were in Algeria together. I don't know if that was vacation.
There, we just take another trip back. I have quite a few notes.
What was the last thing that you read? What was that page that you made?
The page that I just read. Well, I made everybody watch me read.
Don't read it again, please.
I do have to go back and look. I'm not going to read the whole page, because I was smashing through the end here. They were going over his IDs, the difference between Dugan and Calthrop.
Yes, now they have it. Now they have the name of his fake passport because they looked for what passports have been granted to people that are already dead.
That had happened to be deads. That happened to be debtors. The part I found super interesting about this, I love that they keep telling you what day in August it is. Mm-hmm. We are now on the 15th, so the chapters we just read take place over 3 days. 72 hours. it was very interesting to me that the way they replaced passports, and that's still kind of how they did it. The part that made me laugh as they go, and I was laughing as we were reading it, is they said, Calthrop's height, 5 feet 11 inches. Dugan, height, 6 feet. And then they take a paragraph to explain how he could be taller in one than the other, as if
could be shoes.
Anyone is going to take a measuring tape up next to you and be like, oh, he's 6 feet. We got to stop this guy. He doesn't match his passport. My ID says 6'1". It said 6'1" since I was 16. I'm definitely a tiny bit taller than that now, but no one goes 6'1". Really? Like, we're going to keep putting that on your ID? Nobody cares. That part, but then they said, well, he could have thickened heels. You know, like, I don't think he needs heels to change an inch in his passport. But that's what they were going over, is the differences between Charles Calthrop and our man Dugan, who is the passport he used to get into France, but not the ID I think he's going to continue, because he has 3 more fake.
Correct. Yes.
Fake identifications of himself that he has not used at this time. I think one of them is just an in case, I think he said, but we'll get to what those are later. Some fun vocab. Macintosh is a rain jacket. I don't know if you knew that. I didn't know that. He mentions that a couple times.
Oh, I thought it was an apple.
Mon Dieu. It's basically just my God. It's like almost a French curse, if you will. Those were the only... Piquet is just a 2-play card game. Those were, I think, the only like French words that he used that I thought were cool. Except for Sucez-moi, which is blow me, which is a good one. Then he just kind of used a couple other words like lasciviously, which is overtly sexual, and loquacity, which is just like talkative. I just liked those words.
I had to look that last one up. Yeah.
He talks about a club of potentates, which are basically kings. And so he was talking about as all of these men of power, like hanging out, talking like a bunch of, rulers over everything. He talks about a pack drill, which is like a military punishment where you march with full gear, like a full pack of gear. And then our man, the Jackal, dines on a zabaglione, which is an Italian dessert or a beverage made with egg yolk, sugar, and sweet wine. It's kind of like, it can almost be like a gelatin, but it's like, it looks fucking delicious. People put fruit in it and things like that. Yeah, those are my vocab. A couple of notes I made. I love that our boy LaBelle, the good cop, #good cop, called himself a henpecked husband, and then goes, what they don't know is I am. Straight up, it's just like, it turns out like I may look like a henpecked husband. Oh, but I also am a henpecked husband.
Pretty natural role.
He brings up the PJ a lot, which is just police judiciaire, which is essentially the criminal investigation branch of the French police. They do some explanations into how Claude LaBelle is #good cop. He's slow and precise and methodical and painstaking. He always gets his man, they talked about, except for that one guy who got away on a technicality.
But that wasn't his fault.
That's not his fault.
No.
We, of course, get introduced to Lucien Caron, which is his young assistant who makes lots of phone calls and also operates as his translator for the English because he doesn't speak the English words. I thought it was interesting when they explain his office that they used feet instead of meters. But I guess he's being a British author.
Is he a British author?
He is.
Okay. Well, the British use meters, don't they?
They do, but I think
they
I think they kind of invented feet. We were introduced to Colonel Raoul St. Clair, which is, I believe, our the guy who keeps telling all the secrets away.
Right, the guy. Yeah.
He strongly agrees with Micah that the Jackal is no threat.
Yeah. It's not a problem.
Airplane seats that face each other.
Oh yeah, that was wild.
I've been on a plane where the seats face each other. Actually, twice. Once, the first time I ever flew was on a Southwest flight with my dad and my brother, and they had the seats in the back that faced each other and had a table in between.
Like a train.
Yeah. And it was the best thing ever, and I'm kind of upset that planes don't still do that. But I would hate sitting across somebody I didn't know. That would bug me.
That would be awful. And it's not where we're trending more towards
closer together and on top of each other.
They knock us unconscious and roll us in big giant stacks like
they
carpets.
Just pile us into the plane.
Yeah.
We are definitely not moving towards the more comfortable seating.
Plane is going to look like a pack of cigarettes.
I loved the gathering forces montage. I don't know if you noticed that when they started like bringing up all the when they were like going from door to door. It just seemed like they were like building up the team all of a sudden.
What door?
Like when they were finding all the different Charles Calthrops.
Oh yeah, because there's like 3 of them, and they find this one, and he's blind, and they find that one, and he's got no head, and there's only one left. Yeah.
There was another spot I wrote about. I wish I remember it specifically, but it definitely sounded like they were putting the team together. Was kind of like what I was getting was the like. I might have to go back and talk about it next time, but it was like one of those like, it definitely in a movie form you would see the like car pull up, the door open, and then they would nod at each other. And they're like, yeah, this is this guy. Or it would be this guy shows up and he's in a bar fight, and then he's like, oh, I'm needed, I gotta go. Or they're receiving a phone call behind the restaurant they're working off, and they throw their dishwasher costume off and go.
I think most of this section of the book is going to play better on the big screen than it did on the page.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I thought it was pretty good. I liked this section. It's all very...
All of the detective work and all of the work to get away from the detective work on the other side was very straightforward, very linear. There was nothing surprising. There was no...
no, it's all...
twists or anything. It's all very
Back
sequential.
to your original point, it's all dadcore.
Yeah.
It is very much, ooh, look at them doing their jobs.
That's exactly what I would do next.
If this was my job, I would do this
dadcore.
job.
Dadcore is yes.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
That is. I do like that he goes back and forth a whole bunch. So he's like, while this is happening, this is what's happening with our Jackal. I love that the Jackal is confident that he still can do it. He's just like, whatever.
So we got a little bit of inner monologue to the Jackal, and it's basically, boy, I really like staying at nice hotels and eating nice dinners.
I had just read that, and that part made me laugh because they were just like, let's tell him what the Jackal's motivation is, which I think would be fine if they'd spent more time on it, but I almost liked it more not showing what his motivation was other than trying to retire comfortably.
Well, it's just the most basic.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he's getting used to going to fine restaurants. He's always wanted to be rich, and so...
He took a job for a bunch of money that's very dangerous, and the reason that he took the dangerous job for a bunch of money is because he does really like a bunch of money.
I also wish, now that we know who he is, that they would have spent more time explaining how he became good at what he does. Because all we really learned is that he used to work for an arms dealing company, and that he seemed kind of new when he was there, and it sounded like he didn't know much about rifles, which he may have faked. But they don't talk about like his military service or like, or if any there is, that kind of stuff.
There's a whole bunch of flashbacks that they could do for the show. The killing of the Egyptian that we talked about in the first set of pages. That down in the Caribbean or wherever it was, and then they could make up a whole bunch of other stories behind it. That would be interesting. I'd be interested in that.
I like that he took a moment to recognize that Kowalski was also a killer, but also a clumsy one, as he called him. And then I loved the part where they're like, oh, we've got him. This is our guy. Here's his passport that shows he went to this island. And then the guy was like, well, yeah, but if the passport's here, then he's not traveling on the passport. And I love that they explicitly, to make sure that you know that they're British, he says, boyo.
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 Yeah, that was almost a Looney Tunes type of scene.
What could this
Well,
mean?
if the passport's here, then...
Well, I think that's a good moment, but using that term made me be like, was this a U.S. person like making fun of a British person, or a British like actor or an English actor trying to do a British person? That's what I have for the story. I have a feeling that we're going to get into him trying to kill the president here pretty soon.
Yeah.
I think that's what's next. I'm just going to guess.
I would think that'd be in the last quarter of the book would be the...
I don't remember the part where the Jackal spelled his name. That's how a good of a job I did reading it in high school, apparently.
Uh-huh.
Any other comments? Are you still enjoying it?
Yeah, enjoying it. Yeah, I think the first section was my favorite section, and then it's sort of been... The second part was my second favorite, and the third part was my third favorite.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just because now, however many years later, we've had so many of these books that have fed us all of these different twists. I see this in crime TV shows now.
Yeah.
Where they've got to feed you like 10 different surprising versions of who the killer might be and what might their
was a man in a wig.
Be. And finally you get to the very last 10 minutes and the guy who you thought it was for the last episode, it isn't it. It's their kid or whatever. This is just so, like I said, sequential, straightforward. No, nothing that you've got to duck or be surprised by or go back and reread. And I find myself missing that surprising element.
It does not. I don't think they ever try and do there's not a lot of twist. Mm-hmm. There's his name, but that's not necessarily a twist. It's more just like.
I mean that kind
I still think it's kind of bad, but.
Yeah, it's out. That's why I say it's out of character of the book, and it's out of character of the character, and it also isn't smart enough to like be necessary.
No, but I think that outside of that, what I like is that the book isn't trying to mislead you. It's entirely about. It's entirely about them both going through their process and trying to and like.
Historical
playing
nonfiction.
Cat and mouse, but not actually like
fiction.
But like two ships in the night, Cat and the Mouse, right? Like they're both trying to do their whatever their thing is, and they're not interacting with each other. It's not like you narrowly missed him in Zurich, which is like I feel like a lot of crime stuff. It's like they catch up with him and then he gets away, and they're like constantly trying to catch this person. But this is very much true crime, and I think it's very fun in that they're just like. True crime really is about like getting a break in the case, which is like as simple as like, well, there was a rumor about a British dude in this island, and well, I guess let's follow that rumor, right? And then it's 6 dead ends and 1 possible link.
Yeah, it's not 2 people who are trying to outsmart each other or outmaneuver each other. They're just about to intersect.
Yep. And there's definitely a time element to it, right? I think that's the only urgency that's there is that they could like I can feel the urgency on the detective side because they literally like they're like he could be trying to kill him tomorrow. Yeah. So we have to find him now. I did like
couldn't they cross-reference the president's schedule? I mean, he's not going to kill him when he's inside. So we can rule some days out, can't we?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, they could be like, yeah, don't do something for a couple days.
I mean, the president doesn't go outside every day.
He doesn't need to.
It's kind of a whole big thing to get your president outside. You've got to have a whole bunch of people and vehicles and dogs. And
yeah. I like that they are constantly... trying to figure out how to say this. I like that they're constantly showing the 2 different sides of the like detective world or the good guy side or the people trying to find him.
Giving equal time almost to both.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and I don't mean both sides as in the Jackal and then the other side, but that the detective side or the people trying to catch him, that they are showing that there are people going, but maybe he's just not, like, maybe he's not actually going to try and kill him. Or maybe we're wrong. Like, there's a whole bunch of that part that I think is very dadcore, and that they're like, there's this guy that's like, no, I know I'm right. This is a problem. But everybody else is like, this is dumb. Why are we spending like time on this? Like, he probably already gave up.
Yeah. And the dads are sitting there going, I've worked with people like this.
Yeah.
This is Johnny to a T.
All right, well, tune in next time for the exciting conclusion. And then hopefully we'll actually get into, Micah says we're starting with the show.
Starting with a couple of shows.
We got a show that we have to watch about it. We've got 2 movies based on the book.
Or films,
that we got to watch.
as I like to call them.
One of them, I don't know if I would give it a film rating.
One of them, okay. Well, by the end of the series, we'll judge film or movie.
There was a TV show we're watching I was going to relate to the Jackal, and now I'm forgetting what it is. It wasn't Bad Monkey.
Animal Planet?
Yeah. Something with jackals. Well, not important enough for me to remember, so not important enough to talk about.
Lion King's a movie.
Yeah, it's a movie film.
All right.
Well, that's it.